Hello, good morning. My name is Ethan Gallstead. I am the founder of Nagios and the president of Nagios Enterprises. And on behalf of our, thank you. On behalf of our entire company, I'd like to welcome you all to the first Nagios World Conference in North America. It's a real honor to have you here. I know that many of you have traveled a long way to come here. It really is a world conference in that we have attendees from Europe, Asia, Africa, Central and South America, and even faraway places like Canada. So welcome to all of you. We certainly hope that you enjoy the conference and that you find it really useful. We do have a pretty varied experience level that's represented in the audience today. On the one hand, they're really experienced Nagios admins that have been running Nagios for a long time. They have a really complex setup. And on the other end of the spectrum, you've got people who have never deployed a monitoring solution before, have just heard about Nagios and wanted to learn more about what it can do. So what I'm going to do is just kind of start out with an overview of what Nagios is and what its capabilities are and why people find it useful. And then I'll go into some of the new things that are happening, some of the project updates, some of the new projects that we have recently come out with, and some of the new things that are happening around the corner. So with that, let's get started. First of all, Nagios, a lot of people ask what is Nagios when they're not familiar with it. It's most often thought of as an IT infrastructure monitoring application. And what that basically means is that it can monitor your networks, it can monitor your websites, your servers, your applications, and make sure they're working properly. And if they aren't working properly, if they crash, if they, something starts to get out of whack, something starts to go wrong, it can send them an alert, either an email or a text message or some other method, but it lets them know that something has gone wrong, and that allows them to fix the problem hopefully as quickly as possible. It also provides performance graphing, so you can see disk usage over time on your servers or see memory usage over time, and that allows you to do some planning in terms of determining when an upgrade is needed on your network, and also kind of diagnosing the source of problems. And finally, it does offer reporting capabilities, so you can generate a report and you can say, I want to see the availability or the uptime of my websites or my servers over the past week or month. So those are the basic things that Nagios can do. It has some more advanced features, but in a nutshell, that's kind of the high-level overview of what it does. When people talk about Nagios, there are two main pieces of software that are typically referred to as Nagios when they refer to monitoring software. The first is Nagios Core. This was originally called NetSaint back in 1999 when I first did the release, and it was renamed to Nagios in 2002, 2003. And we renamed it to Nagios Core about 2 years ago. It is an open source free monitoring application. That means if you're not familiar with open source, it doesn't cost you anything to acquire it. It still costs you something in terms of time to actually learn it, set it up, configure it, but there's no acquisition cost. The other monitoring product that falls under the Nagios name is Nagios XI, and that's our commercial product. It's built on Nagios Core. It's got some additional stuff built into it. And I'll go into Nagios XI in more detail in a later session today. But those are the two main things that are often referred to as Nagios. We often get asked how many people use it, and it's really hard in open source to come up with numbers, but we are able to track the number of people that do an install of Nagios or an upgrade. And in the last 12 months, we tracked over 3 million installations worldwide. So there's an incredible number of people that use it. That's not to say there are 3 million people running the current version. It's 3 million instances of Nagios were installed. And if you're an Nagios admin, you sometimes know you might install a couple servers and blow them away and reinstall. But that's still a lot of people that we're hearing from. We actually get phone calls still from people that are running NetSaint still today. And that's the software that's 7 years old, 8 years old. So it's a long time. We ask them why they're still doing that, and they say it still works. So that's cool. But a lot of people use it. These are some examples of the companies, the organizations that do use it. They're all across the board. Some very recognizable organizations up here, government, military, commercial, nonprofit, educational. Everybody seems to use it. It doesn't really matter, what sector you're in, either horizontal or vertical, if it's government, education, nonprofit, or if you're in the retail industry or the transportation industry. Everybody has IT systems, computer systems, and they rely on them really heavily. And you don't really appreciate IT systems until they break, and then you realize how much you rely upon them. So people all across the board use it. Reasons why people choose Nagios: if you're an IT admin, like a network admin, sysadmin, help desk staff, they like it because Nagios allows them to see what's going on their network. If you're the IT person, the last thing you want to have happen is for somebody else to tell you that the system you're in charge of is broken. You'd much rather know that ahead of time before your end users do. So they like the fact that they get advanced notification, they get some awareness as to what's going on, so they can fix the problem immediately or as quickly as possible, and minimize downtime, minimize frustration from end users, and the techs that use Nagios really like it. From what I hear time and time again, is they can really customize it and really tweak it to do a lot of different things that I never originally intended it to do, but are very cool uses, and certainly very useful in the way people roll it out. So that's why IT guys like it. On the business organization side, solutions like Nagios, like monitoring solutions, are beneficial in that they help reduce downtime. They don't solve downtime. All systems crash. There's really no way you can prevent that 100%. But systems like Nagios do reduce downtime in that, if they alert you that something is going wrong, you can fix it right away and hopefully shorten that window of downtime. Downtime costs businesses a lot, not only in terms of revenue, but time that it takes to fix it, but also in kind of your public image. A good example of this is a couple of weeks ago, Yahoo had an outage in their free email service, and a lot of people had some issues. Yahoo, it didn't look good for them that their services were down. I'm sure they lost some revenue because they serve ads in their free email service. But even worse than that, Microsoft and some other competitors came in and they were out on Twitter saying, "Hey, look, switch from Yahoo to Microsoft's Hotmail." And not that Microsoft's Hotmail email service is any more stable than Yahoo. It's not. But your competitors can use your downtime, your website downtime, whatever, against you to lure your customers away. So it is something that's pretty important for companies. Overall, why I've heard that Nagios is important to people in the industry, whether they're tech people or kind of managers, is that it gives them a great deal of capabilities and what it can do. Nagios is often used to replace a lot of other very expensive, very capable commercial solutions that are out there on the market, like OpenView, Tivoli, things that you wouldn't think that a free or open source application would be capable of, but it is if you know what to do and you utilize it, I guess, to its fullest. It gives you a lot of flexibility in what to do, what you're going to do with it. But Nagios has a huge community behind it. It's there are very few monitoring products on the market that have a really big community, behind it. I was going to turn this off this morning, but forgot. But Nagios has a pretty big community behind it, and that's really one of the really good way to see that is the number of add-ons that are available for Nagios, the number of plugins, the number of add-on projects. There's a huge community. There's a lot of community support that's available, and that's kind of rare in monitoring projects. There's some companies out there that have pretty big communities behind them. But for an open source monitoring project, Nagios has a really big community, and the cost is extremely competitive. Our commercial product is priced very competitively with market, other people in the market, but Nagios Core doesn't cost anything to acquire it. But even if you buy the commercial product, it pales in comparison to some of the things we hear from people. We've gotten a number of calls in the past couple weeks, from people that switched from other solutions, and I won't name what they are, to Nagios because they wanted to monitor, for example, their AIX servers. and they were trying to work with the vendor for 6 months to try to get MIBs so they could monitor their AIX boxes with SNMP. And after failing to get those MIBs for 6 months, they were told, well, we can give them to you, but it's going to cost you $300,000 or $400,000 a year. That's a lot of money. We've heard from other customers in the past couple of weeks that it was costing them $600,000 a year. It's a lot of money to spend on a solution. And I believe in, obviously using the best solution that works, that solves the problem for your company, but still $500,000 a year is a lot of money that could go towards people and other projects. So it does provide a lot of value to people, the cost, especially in today's market. So what can be monitored? This is we get this question all the time. Basically, any type of computer system you have, servers, workstation, laptops, you can monitor the metrics. CPU, disk, watch those over time and get alerts when things go wrong. Network infrastructure, routers, switches, firewalls, you can monitor all of that with Nagios. There are hundreds of plugins that are available for it. Likewise, databases, all the major databases can be monitored with Nagios. Microsoft SQL, Oracle, DB2, they're all covered. And websites. You can monitor your website for availability, make sure your website hasn't been hacked, that somebody hasn't defaced your website. That's always a good check to implement. And do things like check SSL certificates. So everybody's got a website now. And the websites are really companies, it's their public image. So websites are actually pretty important. The other thing that people usually use Nagios for, often do, is for integrating security alerts. Now, you can use Nagios as a type of security tool when if you do log monitoring, monitor your logs for certain keywords or certain events, and you can monitor your website pages or your SSL certificates to make sure they're okay. But oftentimes people will integrate with Nagios integrate Nagios with other security solutions that they're using. And have those solutions send alerts to Nagios when a security event occurs. Like you can integrate it with your intrusion detection system. So Nagios can serve as kind of a central dashboard for security alerts. Those are kind of some of the common things, I guess, in IT that people monitor, with Nagios. But the way Nagios is designed, it's really flexible. So the Nagios community has come up with some really novel things that they can, or novel solutions, I guess, for monitoring different things. One of those is environmental conditions. Through the use of external probes, external sensors, you can monitor, things that are kind of important, like is there smoke coming out of the server room on a Saturday night, or is the basement flooded? When you're on vacation, those kind of things are, pretty nice to know. They're also monitoring solar and wind sources, so you can monitor, the battery load, the current coming off of your solar panels, just kind of some neat stuff that I never thought Nagios would be doing. We heard from one company, actually in Europe, it's a paper mill. They're using Nagios to monitor the thickness of the paper on industrial paper rolls. And if the manufacturing process gets a little bit off and the paper is either too thick or too thin outside of tolerance, Nagios can stop the manufacturing process and they can fix the problem before it costed a lot of money. And we've also talked to people who actually did work for vehicle manufacturers where Nagios is being used to monitor different automated processes in the shops, in the plants where they actually manufacture vehicles. One example of that is monitoring the paint spraying process to make sure the paint is going on properly. So it's kind of out of the box things that people have done with Nagios that I just think are really neat. It shows you the flexibility too. We hear from a lot of people that monitor that they work for a company that has retail locations and they monitor the cash registers with Nagios. It's pretty flexible, allows them to do that. The first phone call that we got in, I put order queues here. The first phone call that we got into our company when we launched it in 2007 was a phone call from a pizza chain, and they wanted to use Nagios to monitor the number of orders that were in the queue. And it was our first day. We just announced that, hey, we're in business. And I answered the phone, and it's like, I wasn't prepared to answer the phone, like, obvious things that you should think about. So I got the company name, but I didn't get the guy's personal name, phone number, email address, or anything. And afterwards, after the phone call was done, we thought maybe that was a prank call or something. But we actually did do work for that company later. It's kind of neat, but it shows you what you can do with Nagios. Radio stations, if you're in radio, the worst thing that can happen to you is not necessarily that your website goes down, it's that there's silence on the radio station. If your listeners hear silence, they're going to switch to the next station, and you're going to lose some revenue eventually if you have a lot of downtime. One Nagios user actually hooked up a wire from the on-air button at the console to his Nagios server, so that if the button was pressed and the station was off air for too long, like somebody fell asleep, somebody, left the wheel, somebody would get an alert so they could fix it, right away and get the station back on air. So just kind of neat stuff. Financial, people have plugins for monitoring. One guy wrote a plugin to monitor like the US dollar to euro conversion rate. He wanted to watch the value of his portfolio or something. There are plugins for monitoring stock prices, product prices, everything that you care about financially, which is kind of neat. Safety, in terms of like weather alerts, hey, there's a tornado coming, or there's an amber alert in the area. There are also plugins available for monitoring. I think the UK terror alert level, and I think there's probably one for the US alert level, but it'll probably never change from orange. But there is a plugin available for it. And one Japanese user of Nagios actually hooked up Nagios to a radiation monitor. Outside of his office, he was pretty near Fukushima a couple months ago, so he hooked up Nagios to his radiation detector and was able to graph the radiation coming off of it, which is really neat. It's also like an alert from Nagios that you don't want to get, like that the radiation is too high. But it's just a really neat application of a monitoring solution. It does show you just how flexible it is. Nagios is designed to be super flexible, and this is why I think a lot of tech people like it. They can make it do what they want it to do fairly easily. You can monitor basically anything that has a digital interface or a computer interface of some kind. If you can access information with an API of some kind, you can monitor that with Nagios and make sure that thing is within safe bounds or normal operating bounds. And it's easy to create your own as well. So as an example of something that is kind of out of the box that shows you just how flexible it is, I wrote a new plugin. It's available on Nagios Exchange. So enter Check Doomsday. It's a new plugin that allows you to monitor an arbitrary doomsday date of your choice. So you can get alerts as the doomsday approaches, and assuming the doomsday passes, you get a recovery alert. That's also another alert that you certainly hopefully get. But it shows you that Nagios can be used for monitoring things other than computer systems, and like a date in time is something that's really, it's kind of ethereal. It's not a computer system. It's this idea. But you can monitor time on a computer. So just an example. So anyway, that's kind of the basics of what Nagios is and what it can do. I'm going to switch now. I'm going to talk about some of the new things that are happening with Nagios and the different projects that kind of fall under the Nagios name, because there are a lot of them. There are far too many to talk about. There are hundreds of projects that could be, fall under the Nagios name, I guess. But I'll talk about a few that we're working on or that we're involved in our company. One is a new PHP open source GUI for Nagios Core called Nagios vShell. And one of our awesome developers, Mike Guthrie, who is here and giving a presentation later, wrote the first version of this and has done the most development on it. It's gotten a lot of interest from the Nagios community. It's one of the biggest downloads on our Exchange site. So it does offer some benefits over the CGIs. It's designed to run alongside the CGI. So if you've got an existing Nagios Core installation, you can install vShell alongside the CGIs and test it out. And obviously, it's an open source project, so if you want to contribute, I'm sure Mike would be happy to get some contributions from additional people. I know some others have already helped out. We're just wrapping up a new mobile application for Nagios called Nagios Mobile. Should be out in a month or two. Just allows you to very easily from any kind of phone. It's not an Android app. It's not a It's not an iPhone app. It's a web app. So any device that has a web access, you can use this just so you can see the current status of what's going on in your network, acknowledge problems, schedule downtime, all the common stuff that you need to do. It makes it pretty nice to be able to take that on your smartphone and I guess deal with problems. You're never you're always on call, I guess, when Nagios can reach you anywhere with your cell phone now. But another project that we're working on is called Nagios CCM. It stands for the Nagios Core Config Manager, and this project actually came out of work that we did on our commercial product, Nagios XI. We integrated kind of an advanced configuration front end, Nagios QL, into the product, and based on feedback from our customers as to the changes they'd like to see, we actually decided to rewrite a lot of the front end of Nagios QL. We're going to be releasing that as Nagios CCM. It's basically just a PHP advanced config GUI for Nagios Core. If you're used to using Nagios, a lot of the configuration historically has been done from a text editor. You log into a shell prompt, you edit something, an Emacs or VI or Nano. But this web front end, I think, is going to be very helpful to a number of people. I know one of the big things that we've seen with our commercial product is people really like a web configuration front end, and there are a number of other ones out there actually for Nagios that exist right now that you can use as well. It just makes it a lot easier, and it puts the power of configuring Nagios into other people's hands. They don't need to be a Linux or Unix wizard. They don't need to know the keystrokes to make VI work. They can modify something through the web interface. So it's a new project. This should be out in a couple months here. BPI is another project. Actually, Mike Guthrie is also responsible for this. This is a new it's a new add-on that allows you to visualize business processes with Nagios, and this works with both Nagios Core and Nagios XI. If you're not familiar with what a business process is, think of it as a high-level, could be a pseudo service or high-level idea. So if you're a tech person, if your manager were to come to you and say, what's the status of the Apache or IIS web server or the DNS servers or the email server, you'd be able to probably give them an answer. But if they said, what's the status of the e-commerce system, it's a little tougher for you to give them an answer because an e-commerce system is comprised of a lot of little working pieces that need to work underneath the hood. And so you can set up, using the BPI tool, you can set up a business process called e-commerce system status, for example, and have it display kind of the aggregated status of all the subcomponents, like your web servers, like your DNS, like your web transactions. It's very powerful. A lot of people are actually finding this quite interesting to use. They like it. We're also coming out with a new trap manager to make it easier to manage, view, work with SNMP traps. SNMP traps have been supported in Nagios for a long time. They're a little challenging to work with. Anybody that has used SNMP knows that the Simple Network Management Protocol was the wrong acronym. SNMP is not simple. There are a lot of challenges in deploying it, but this front end is actually helpful for a lot of people that do want to integrate SNMP traps into Nagios. We've also been working on, we started this a couple months ago, and we've been working on other projects, so this got put on the back burner for a little bit. But we still are working on this. It's called Nagios Montage. The idea behind Montage is to come out with basically an easy-to-use distribution for people that don't want to manually find the graphing add-on for Nagios that works best for them, don't want to find the configuration front end, don't want to install 20 different components to get a working monitoring system. So the Montage system will just be a combination of the most common or most, I guess, requested things that we hear about, that we see on Exchange. We'll integrate that, and it'll be 100% open source. There are different licenses that the components use, either GPL or BSD, but everything that will be included will be open source. NRDP, if you use passive checks either for integrating alerts from external applications or maybe you're doing distributed monitoring and you're using NSCA, NRDP is meant to be the replacement for NSCA. There are a lot of limitations with NSCA. It needs to be compiled with a C compiler, which is challenging on some different operating systems. It uses really it's a proprietary protocol. I mean, it's not truly proprietary, but it's a proprietary protocol. I guess we made it up. It's got some limitations. NRDP is much easier. It uses HTTP to transfer all the data. The data is all encoded in XML, so it's very flexible. And the people that have used it really like it. They find it much easier to use. There's a PHP client available, and one of the community members has already contributed a Perl client. So I think we'll also be adding a shell client as well. You need shell script access. Nagios Core. Nagios Core is the main monitoring engine that has for a long time been the only thing that people have known Nagios for. It's also what we rely on as the base monitoring engine in our commercial product. So everybody is wants to make sure this project is always maintained. In the past year or so, the team has been expanded. We've changed the way it looks. We integrated Matt Wall's exfoliation theme. Matt Wall is actually here as a speaker, will be speaking. But we integrated his theme. It was the most popular theme, look and feel for Nagios on Exchange, and obviously the usual bug fixes and performance improvements that go into any open source project. We actually are hiring a software developer right now to provide some additional assistance on Nagios Core and some of the C-based add-ons. So if you know anybody or if you are interested, certainly let us know. Grab us afterwards. If you use NDO Utils, NDO Utils is the database backend for Nagios. It's the backend that a lot of open source add-ons for Nagios use. There are some changes that are going to be coming in NDO Utils that make it a lot more efficient and improve its performance quite a bit. One of those is the asynchronous non-blocking writes. If you use NDO Utils right now, you know that it has some limitations in that all the writes to the database operate in a synchronous blocking fashion, which means if your database server is slow, it's going to slow down your monitoring server. And the changes that we implement are going to change that and get rid of that limitation. We are also, as a company, this isn't an open source project, but it's something that the community has wanted and has been asking for. We are in the process of finalizing a certification program for Nagios. We're going to start with Nagios Core and then also offer certification programs or levels for Nagios XI in the future as well. But we intend to have Nagios Core certification available by the end of this year. We'll have 2 levels of certification, both a professional and an administrator, that are, if you're a help desk and kind of an end user, the professional certification might be more appropriate. If you're an admin, you'd want the administrator, certification. There's more information on this. There's actually a sheet in the packet that you received on training and certification if you want more information. And then we do a lot of work on our Nagios XI product. It's where a lot of our focus is, just because that's what our customers are asking us for. We've done a lot of work in the past year. We've added auto discovery, a lot more features that help with distributed monitoring. We have a lot of different customers with different needs in terms of distributed monitoring. Some of our clients are managed service providers, and they have certain types of setups. There are probably 3 or 4 different types of distributed monitoring setups that people want, and we've actually made some changes, some improvements in Nagios XI in the past year that make deploying it in those types of environments much easier. We're also working on things like scheduled reporting. One of our guys has built that, and it's being tested right now by a couple of customers. So, and again, I'll talk about this later in a different session today. But really, there's what I talked about is just a very small sampling of what's out there for Nagios. There are literally hundreds of projects. On our Exchange site, exchange.nagios.org, if you're not familiar with that, that's where you're going to find a couple thousand, I think we're up to like 2,600 different projects for Nagios, and those could be plugins, those could be add-ons, those could be like a tutorial or video tutorial, or write up some kind of how-to. There's a lot of stuff the Nagios community contributes to, and this site is pretty active. There's something new happening every week. We actually took a look at the submissions to Nagios Exchange since 2009 when we started tracking the stats, and it's pretty impressive. You know, in 2009 we had about 400 new Nagios projects that were submitted to this site. Last year a little over 500. It looks like this year we're going to be on board for 600. It's a lot of completed projects. And again, you know, a project can just be a plug-in, but it is a project. Somebody completed it, and it's something that you can use, something that could solve a problem for you. So it's pretty exciting. Nagios, I mean, I've been involved in Nagios for 12, 13 years now, and the amount of activity in the past couple of years is it's crazy. I mean, you can ask anybody in our company how many projects that we have on our desks or what's happening in the community, and it's really kind of crazy. It's really fun, and there's a lot happening, so it's exciting. You know, I just wanted to say that, you know, Nagios is not, it's not just software. It's not just, you know, hey, it's not just something that can solve your problem. It really is an ecosystem because it combines software and solutions with the community worldwide. And events like this conference are a great place for people to get together, share ideas, collaborate, get to know each other. And we certainly hope that you enjoy this event and that you take the advantage to meet different people from different countries, from different states, from different organizations. There are people here that are doing some amazing things with Nagios, and I actually want to peek at their presentations because they're doing some stuff that we definitely are interested in. But take the advantage to meet people and just enjoy this event. We hope you enjoy it. We had a lot of fun putting this event together, and we hope you enjoy it. So thank you, and enjoy the conference.